15. If you're wondering what that number is for, it's for the number of years since Avatar The Last Airbender released the episode Tales of Ba Sing Se. Coincidentally, it's also the 15th episode of Book 2. You know what that means? We're getting older. But really, yes, that Avatar episode that brought us the hit song Leaves from the Vine and a whole lot of tears is now 15 years old as of recording. And you know what? It's still relevant to this day. Let's revisit the episode, recap, and take a look why. So the episode takes place in the Earth Kingdom city Ba Sing Se, the same city that Iroh tried to burn to the ground a few years back, and the same city where he lost his son, Lu Ten. Noticeably, Appa is also absent from this episode because the episode itself takes a different approach to storytelling, as instead of one whole narrative being followed, we are given vignettes of Toph and Katara, Iroh, Aang, Sokka, Zuko, and Momo that follow them throughout their adventures in the city. A lot of people claim that this is a filler episode or an episode where nothing really happens to drive the plot, but I disagree. While this episode does take a break from the bigger picture, it also adds to the world itself and the characters in it. In simpler terms, we get context from this episode. It builds on the motivations of the characters, and it also adds depth to them in ways that other series can't or even want to. Despite their seemingly simple plot lines, it also plays with the perspective of the viewer, whether they be the child, the adolescent, or the experienced. At any stage of our lives, we can derive meaning in the experiences of the group. Even if we aren't benders, even if we aren't avatars or skilled warriors, this show takes a break from the bigger picture to highlight the human side of the group, the human side that any one of us can resonate with. Toph's and Katara's vignette, we get to see them having a girls' day out. They go to a spa, they have their hair and makeup done, and it's also seemingly simple and light until they encounter another group of girls that go out of their way and bully Toph. It's a turning point at this moment because then we see another side of Toph, the vulnerable side. And after giving the group their comeuppance, Toph retreats back to her strongman persona, trying to push away the hurt. Fortunately, Katara is there to comfort her, to give her solace, softening that once rock-hard exterior of a little girl that just wanted to be accepted. It's a great dynamic to have the one that bends water soften the one who bends earth. It's also so easy to relate to this. I'm not afraid to say that it's happened to me, and I'm pretty sure that it's happened to the vast majority of us. Given this, ask yourself, when was the last time you felt vulnerable? Then ask yourself, who gave you solace? Or, better yet, ask yourself, when was the last time you gave solace to somebody vulnerable? In Sokka's vignette, we get to see him having fun with a haiku rap battle, and it all starts when Sokka overhears a group of girls and their teachers practicing haiku. After a weird turn of events, he finds himself inside the room and having a contest with none other than the teacher. He never gets that haikus are supposed to involve nature, but he does get that there are a certain number of syllables that you need to adhere to. Despite his ignorance, he has fun competing with the teacher until he eventually miscounts the syllables and gets thrown out quite violently. This is the simplest of the stories we get in this episode, but surprisingly, I think it's also one of the deeper ones as well. Sokka, despite making a fool of himself, found joy in what he was doing. And in an age, both in the times of their own, where finding joy is getting harder and harder, here's Sokka finding joy in the simpler things in life, embracing the absurdity. It begs the question, when was the last time you found joy? And when was the last time you embraced the absurdity? There's one character in the series that embodies conflict, it's Zuko. And lo and behold, we get that from his vignette as he gets to experience something new, a date with an Earth Kingdom girl. The episode follows him as he awkwardly maneuvers through his social faux pas and as he tries to keep his secret identity as the Fire Nation Prince. Miraculously, they get to a moment where the two share a kiss. However, Zuko, being the Fire Nation Prince, a prince of the nation that is threatening to burn their city to the ground, he pulls back and retreats back to the tea house, leaving the girl by herself. Unlike the moments of simple joys in life as highlighted in Sokka's story, it's also full of new experiences that can lead to conflicts. And although it's messy, and it's very messy in real life, sometimes these new experiences and conflicts can still be beneficial to us. Or, as Zuko would put it,
it was nice.
In Aang's vignette, we get to see him roaming the city and finding a zoo. A very sad zoo. The animals are caged, they're lacking in food, and they're deprived of space to roam around in. Aang, still feeling responsible for the loss of Appa, brings it upon himself to provide for the animals what he couldn't give to Appa at the moment: shelter, security, and safety, by releasing them outside the city. It didn't turn out too well, and this led to chaos in the city, as in the process, the animals ran wild, as wild animals do. Using Appa's whistle, he's able to call their attention and lead them to a field outside the city where he displayed his growth in earthbending, shaping the land into a place where the animals could live comfortably. Again, this story might seem simple, but you have to put yourself in Aang's shoes. Even with all that power, even with all his skills, he still felt powerless. He felt lost. The only thing that he could do at that moment was to do for these animals what he couldn't do for Appa. Hence, his fixation on freeing and saving them. Again, during the past 15 years, how many times have you felt powerless? How many times have you felt lost? And during those moments, what were the only things that you could do? Momo's vignette begins with him having a dream about Appa, only to wake up with a flying bison still missing. However, he does find a clump of his fur in Sokka's bag, prompting him to try and find Appa through its scent. Every time he thinks he's found him, they're just objects that look strikingly similar. It's during this search that he encounters wild cats that then pursue him, only for all of them to be captured by what seem to be poachers. Momo, having opposable thumbs, frees himself from the cage the first chance he gets. But instead of leaving, he hesitates and looks back at his farmer pursuers, the wild cats. He ultimately frees them and is then repaid by the cats by bringing him to the last place Appa was seen. Momo then sees Appa's footprint on the ground, wet and muddy, but that didn't matter. Momo lies down on the ground, curling right up at the center of the footprint, longing for his friend. You know, 15 years is a long time, and with as much conflict, solace, loss, joy, and vulnerable moments that we've encountered, longing isn't that far behind. Whether it's something or someone, friends we've lost contact with, or family that moved away, or maybe something worse. Sometimes, life just has a habit of keeping us apart. Not far from the last vignette shown in the episode, I chose to save Iroh's for last. Why? Because it's in him that we see the culmination of all of this. His story starts out simple enough as he goes out to find a basket and some items, only to get distracted helping people he encounters. As pointed out by many, these are the stages of his son, Luten's life that he could have been a part of. We saw joy in his face as he helped even a little flower that just needed a little more care. We saw him offer solace to a man who was down on his luck and lost, and we see a mixture or a tinge of each of the themes we've gone through his day. But one moment, one timeless moment that encapsulates all of these themes is when Iroh walks up the hill with a lone tree as the sun sets. He gathers rocks and carefully sets them to form an altar where he sets a portrait of his son who died in a war of his own design, Luten. "Happy birthday, my son," he says as his voice cracks. "If only I could have helped you." He then proceeds to sing Leaves from the Vine, a song we all know too well. The outpouring of emotions from Iroh is the culmination of everything we've experienced throughout the episode. Vulnerability, solace, joy, conflict, loss, and longing. All of this has led us to the man we know now as Iroh. The same Iroh who acts as a guiding force and surrogate father for Zuko. The same Iroh who led the White Lotus to redeem himself. The same Iroh who gave everything up after losing what was most important to him, traveling the world to find solace. Solace that no one could ever offer him. Honestly, when I was young, most of this never really sunk in. It was a fun episode for me then, but throughout the years, I kept seeing the reactions of people to the episode and wondered why it affected them as it did. 15 years later, I rewatched the episode and suddenly it all made sense. This episode is like a book that when reread changes meaning at different periods of your life. When I first watched it, all I found was the same kind of joy those kids playing soccer had. Now with the added 15 years of perspective, I understand it a lot more, and it hits harder, much harder than it first did. Maybe 15 years from now, if I rewatch it, it'll hit a different way again. But enough about me, how about you? In those 15 years, when was the last time you found joy in the little things? Or experienced something new? When was the last time you felt vulnerable? When was the last time somebody gave you solace? Or what about the harder questions? The ones about loss or longing? You know, we can't escape any of this. But in the 15 years that will pass, all I can ever ask for is to be a person closer to what Iroh is now. And such is the timeless tales of Ba Sing Se.